suddenly changing their narrative where, why are so many people beating up the Democrats about it? Because when you look at it, the Republicans who did not vote for the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan, they were really voting to defund the police, because now Joe Biden says, you know what, spend the money any way you want to the localities. If you want to hire more cops, go ahead. But when they were selling the program back a couple of months ago, they didn't even mention that. And in fact, in the bill, police not mentioned one time.
Well, it's really the progressives. If you look at the party, the people who are saying defund, defund, it's AOC, it's Ayanna Pressley, it's many progressives. Jim Clyburn has spoken out against defunding the police. He's a Democrat, represents South Carolina, #3 Democrat on the Hill, and he says this: what I try to do is demonstrate by precept and example how we are to proceed as a party. When I spoke out against sloganeering like burn baby burn in the 60s and defund the police, which I think is cutting the throats of the party, I know exactly where my constituents are. They are against that, and I am against that.
And it's kind of heartening to see. They asked him too, the precept, the reason for talking to him is that he endorsed for Martha Fudge's seat a moderate Democrat, not Nina Turner, who was chief of staff for Bernie Sanders, and that led to this conversation because the wild left wing is hurting their party. On average, the party in power in the midterm elections loses 23 seats in the House. They only have a 4 or 5 seat advantage, so they know they're in trouble. This is helping lead them down the path of destruction, and he's desperate for someone to listen.
Right, and this kind of got started over the weekend. Cedric Richmond, who is one of the president's advisors, said, it's the Republicans who are defunding the police, which is, that's crazy talk. So yesterday, after he had talked to Jen Psaki about it on Monday, Peter Doocy said to her essentially, okay, you're saying the Republicans are doing it? I've got a list of Democrats who say defund the police, but Jen Psaki, just name one Republican who's talking about that. And you know what? She did not name one Republican. Here's what she said.
There are lots of examples of Democrats explicitly saying they want to defund the police. Are there any examples of Republican members of Congress saying they want to defund the police?
I think most people would argue that actions are more important than words, wouldn't you say?
At the time of the vote on the American Rescue Plan, you had the Republican leader in the Senate, Mitch McConnell. He said he just didn't like it because he thought it was a classic example of big government Democratic overreach.
Well,
where is we're going to vote against this because we want to defund the police?
Again, I think actions speak louder than words, Peter. So if you oppose funding for the COPS program, something that was dramatically cut by the prior administration and many Republicans supported, and then you vote against a bill that has funding for the COPS program, we can let other people evaluate what that means.
Well, first the words came from the Democrats, and it was defund the police. Then they did take action. They took action in New York City, D.C., Baltimore, Oakland, Philly, L.A., San Francisco, Atlanta, Minneapolis,
And
Seattle, Austin.
Crime? What happened to crime in all those places?
You read my mind. That was exactly what I was going to say. What happened in all these cities? Crime went up. Who runs all these cities? Democrats.
And by the way, in New York City, Mayor de Blasio got a huge influx of free money for stuff he didn't deserve, and there is zero money for new cops in it. There's $200 billion for police reform, $100 million to house ex-cons, but $12 million to hire 180 people for enhanced precinct-based consumer experience, but nothing for, with all your money, Mayor de Blasio and Democrats, nothing for more cops or an expanded academy. Just to destroy cops and expand it in their other ways, social programs. Meanwhile, I don't know if you picked up Politico today, but the New York Post also has an excerpt from it. It has an explosive story that's got to be utterly embarrassing yet familiar regarding Vice President Kamala Harris. It turns out they talked to 22 unnamed sources working in and around her, and it is a mess, a chaotic mess inside her office. You saw 2 people who had the travel program pick up, pack up, and leave last week, right after she landed in El Paso for her first ever border visit. And under the curtain, behind the curtain I should say, it is a disaster, just like they were saying about her campaign when it imploded before the first
Yeah,
primary.
the article says that planning that trip, it was chaotic. It was a chaotic moment for the staff. They were scrambling to make those travel arrangements. Here's an excerpt from the Politico article. It says, people are thrown under the bus from the very top. There are short fuses, and it's an abusive environment. It's not a healthy environment, and people often feel mistreated. It's not a place where people feel supported, but a place where people feel treated like You know the word.
We do know the word. And the story starts by talking about how, we've been talking about why wasn't she going to the southern border? Apparently in, dialogue, both online and in text and in real life, her aides were saying, if we go to the southern border, there's going to be so much political fallout because it's a no-win situation. I'm extrapolating, that's what they were talking about. So let's go do it. And then next thing you know, the White House announced, she's going down there. So she was caught off guard. There seems to be a lot of frustration, not only at the vice president, because, it all starts at the top, but with her chief of staff, a woman by the name of Tina Flournoy, who's been a Democratic operative for a long time. She's to protect the vice president, which is her job. They say, according to the Politico bean spillers, that a lot of ideas that the staff is having are ignored or dismissed, and it is simply not a healthy environment. People are walking around, they got short fuses, and the vice president's office is not a healthy place to work.
Some of the adjectives were low morale, porous lines of communication, diminished trust, and very tense. Dan Bongino said he was in the Secret Service. No one wants to work for the number 2 person anyway. Listen.
Nobody wants to work for number 2, okay? Even in the Secret Service or on the staff. They don't. There's great guys over there. I love them. They do an amazing job. But I know the staff. I've worked with them on both sides. You see them running around. Everybody wants to work for the boss. So combine that with the fact that Kamala Harris is uniquely untalented for this position.
Right.
She has no skills whatsoever. She's not well liked. She can't stop cackling, and she's terrible at the job and to show no leadership. Jesse, you know that meme on the internet? You had one job. She had one job. Just fix the border thing, and she can't even fix that.
Remember, the New York Times, in the last day before our campaign imploded, they said, one of her state directors was quoted in the New York Times story, said, "This is my 3rd presidential campaign, and I've never seen an organization treat its staff so poorly." What are we hearing from 22 people? Treat people poorly. How unprepared was she in Guatemala to answer a question of why haven't you gone to the border? That's preparation, and that's an incompetent executive. This is a warning signal for the future of the Democratic Party. This is not your future. If it is your future, she won't have one, nor will your party.
I think a lot of people think the vice president and the president have the same team. They don't. Joe Biden's got a team, Kamala Harris has got a team, and right now, it's interesting. We don't hear any bad stuff about what's going on behind the scenes at the White House. However, what's going on with the vice president, that suddenly, according to Politico, is a big problem.
Maybe the White House is behind it. Who knows? Meanwhile, turning now to several legal bombshells. Bill Cosby is waking up this morning at home.